Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to learn the first of the basics of Swift. Now, Swift is a language that was released in 2014 by Apple as a replacement to their very old Objective-C. Now, they made it exactly 30 years after Objective-C came out. So if you think about it, Objective-C came out in 1984, and now in 2014, now it's 2016, Apple released Swift. And yes, Swift is very related to Objective-C, but we'll explore the differences and every other things like that. Now, Swift is like any other programming language, but the thing is, Apple specialized it for app development when they first made it. Now Swift is open source, so other places can use Swift. But when they first made it, it was for app development, iOS app development. So I'm going to show you a little bit of Swift. So the main development environment that we're going to be using throughout this video is called Xcode. And if we look on the App Store, and yes, you need a Mac for this, and you search up Xcode, it's going to be the very first one. So if we open this, it doesn't really have that very good reviews, but it's actually very useful. So if you don't have Xcode, here it's going to say install. Now, since I've already installed it, and yes, Xcode is a fairly big application, few gigabytes, and see down here, the size right there, 4.7 gigabytes. Well, that's big. So you're probably gonna have to wait a little. So you might as well just download the app and pause the video right here. So once you finish downloading that, let's get to work. Let's go ahead and press open. And we're going to get started with another playground. A new playground, I would say. And you can name it whatever you want. I'm just going to name it Hello World. And again, we're just going to be doing an iOS platform. Doesn't really matter what platform we use because we're not really developing any kind of apps. So we'll press next, and I'll just save on the desktop. So here, when you first create a playground, it's going to give you this patch of code right here. And we can delete this. We don't need it. And so, a few things. If you're used to languages like Java or C++, you're probably used to defining variables like this. Int something equals 0. And it won't work here. And you're probably also used to putting a semicolon. Swift is different. Now, Swift, instead, you can define a constant, where you just put let, or you can define a variable, which is var, which we saw earlier with this. It's setting a variable right there. You do not have to specify the type. Swift will automatically find the type based on the value you give it. And if it doesn't know the type, it's going to set the type to any. Now, any, it can be anything. Okay, so any, it's like that. And the thing is, there's also any object, and any class, and any collection, stuff like that. And so let's say we got a variable called my first variable. And let's set it to 0. And you're probably used to putting semicolons. Semicolons they're okay to put, but Swift, you do not need semicolons, which is a good thing. Because then you don't have to, like, after you type the line, you forgot to put the semicolon, you move on to the next line. Let's say, my first variable equals 1. And then it doesn't compile correctly. But semicolons are optional. If you want to put semicolons, you can put multiple lines into one line. So that's the benefits of any language. Any language, you always have to put semicolons, but yes, you can put two lines of code into one line. And then, so technically you could have a one-lined piece of file. It would be the same size, but it would be kind of hard to read. In my opinion, that's what I would think. And let's say we put let my first constant equals 0. Now, as any language, you can't set the value of a constant. So we say my first constant equals 1. It's going to give us an error. It says, cannot assign to value. My first constant is a let constant. And yes, that is true because it is a constant. Let means constant. Var means variable. And in other words, we could say let is immutable, var is mutable. Now, mutable, it probably sounds like something bad, like you're going to mutate someone, but it's that kind of mutate where you can change something. It's a change mutation. Now, let's just delete that, but we can say my first variable equals 1, and we can just say that, and it will not give us an error. We can also call if statements, but we'll cover those later. So those are like the very first things. We've only been dealing with integers for now. Let's move on to the other types. So I'm going to delete all my lines of code. And we've got types like string. We've got types like double and float. Double and float, as usual. And we've also got types like dictionary, array, and stuff like that. Let's say we're defining an array. You would say var array equals brackets. And then you're going to put some parentheses to make sure that it's just you're defining an array. And here it's given us an error because we do not need that. But it's asking for a type. So let's say this is an array of strings. Then we're just going to put string there. And it's going to give us an error again because that's when the parentheses come in. It's going to construct the type. And then we say array. We put our array, right? And we put, if we're going to add something to that, you're going to put append. And we're just going to have new element. Now, what are we going to append? It's up to your choice. Append high. Then we could just do print array. And you actually don't need the print. You could just put array. In a playground, that's the good thing about a playground. You could also append multiple elements. But that won't work here. You can only append one element at a time. got that. And array dot remove all. And we can also keep the capacity. So keeping capacity true. And now that array is empty. Now let's say we try to, let's see. I'm gonna append those two again and append them again. Keeping capacity actually doesn't really do anything, so we don't actually need it. Unless you're doing a project where you're only allowed to have a certain amount of users, I guess, or a certain amount of messages, and you're trying to delete everything. If you're like an admin and you just want to keep the amount in there. So we've covered that, and dictionaries work in the same way. So let's do dictionary, or just dict, equals string. And notice we put that little colon right there. And we can just do the same thing as usual, but this is now a dictionary dot. But you can call functions like count and other things. But you're probably going to want to put plus equals name Jeffrey. And it's going to give you an error. Because for dictionary, you're going to have to say dictionary name equals hi. You have to specify that. Oh, and I missed a T right there. So then we call dic. It's going to give us name, hi. We can also set other values like age equals something, because my age is something. So we're just going to call out dict. Now notice that dictionary, you can't call out commands like append and stuff like that. You can't call out commands like append. Because a dictionary, you have to set key values. You have a key and then you have a value. Notice usually the key will be a string, but the value can be anything. Usually it will be any object. And there's also another thing. If you have a type that won't match, but here it's just saying we probably have to convert this. There is a way to convert. We can just put as any object. And sometimes that conversion might fail. And again, we're just going to put any object. And it still works the same way. So in the next few videos, we're going to be covering if statements, for statements, switch statements, and everything that you'll need to know for the basics of Swift. So see you then!